For those who remember, for those who will never forget, and for those who will experience the Star Trek adventure for the very first time. The Star Trek Hexology. Six timeless adventures that have changed Star Trek forever. Now, all 6 films remastered in glorious HD for the ultimate in sound and picture quality. This will be your last chance to own a physical copy of Star Trek. The Gene Roddenberry creation that launched the Star Trek franchise. The human adventure has just begun. For all generations. The original Star Trek films on sale one last time. Welcome back to CHILLPOREAL, everybody. I am your host, Brian, the Nerdporeal Lifeform himself. And, well, with me, I got a very special guest, the host of Reality Based, straight from the UK itself. UK, isn't that synonymous with tyranny? Tyranny, sir? Or the attempt to unify humanity under crap right now. So we got Ryan Roger Athay right here. What's up?
Well, it's great to be here, Nerdporeal, while I am still alive. Yes, this is the face of a 25-year-old, and I'm very grateful to be here, and fingers crossed we'll have a great talk about many different things, including some topics of the day, and fingers crossed everyone will enjoy. I mean, imagine what I could do with a budget of $400 million, because that was the budget for Concorde. I'd probably conquer my entire country with a budget of that. Damn.
The 400 million. I basically the 400 million. I found out through my buddy Dread Roberts. He covered that in a video today. I was listening to it. So, that's he's been my gaming news. So everybody subscribe to Dread Roberts. Great channel. So we got Benji Alucard 1068. Wrong channel. What does that mean?
Hey, Benji, I can be on other people's shows. There was a time, believe it or not, when I was a wholly wholesome content creator, never controversial in any way, shape, or form. Then I met Atreus and everything changed.
Oh my God, I haven't talked to you in ages. Vigilante Williamson, how you doing? It's good to see you. He says, you're not that racist. You were pretty kind to me in a video unless I'm your token. Well, there's only one way you can be my token. You got to take out your bass and you got to compose a bass line for me. God damn it.
So many great
that was a great episode of South Park.
So many great rising stars. It doesn't matter what color they are, so long as they are reality based, though. Let's face it, folks, in this day and age, multiculturalism has failed. Our present society is living proof. Especially in the UK.
I mean, like just like it's I mean, I like the idea of basically I like the idea of people coming together, people learning from each other, but I mean, it has to be real. It has to be, as a certain candidate says, it has to be organic. It has to be organic. And I'm just, if it's not organic, then it's not going to work, and bad shit's going to happen. So but
Oh,
yeah,
is he
so
frozen?
Ryan, I gotta ask you, how do you come
Go
across
on.
my? How'd you come across? How'd you come across my channel? I could tell. Once you finish, I'll tell you how I first came across. Believe it, believe it or not, I first
Mhm.
came across you. You were on another channel, but
Mhm.
I'll let you start.
Well, I will say, ladies and gentlemen, back in the early days of my second run as a content creator, this was before reality based was really an ideal I was striving for. I was simply an up and coming content creator trying his best to get to know as many people as possible, and Rising Stars as a series was the way that came about, alongside the suggestion videos that I was also known for. I got to know Nerdporeal Lifeform through fine folks and fellow creators, because it's not what you know, it's who you know. As for the exact details, there's a reason I have a Me on Other Shows playlist. As for the exact details, I can't remember off the top of my head, but that was one hell of a fun time. I wanted to get more of a perspective from the high fantasy community, and Nerdporeal was and still is one of the leading voices in highlighting the problem with high fantasy. And I thought, well, very talented, criminally underrated, less so now. But I thought he would go far as a rising star, and he certainly has. We might have to put you on the reality based Rising Stars show, Nerdporeal. We took the reality based show with the
Mm-hmm.
Rising Stars video format, and we smashed it together to create reality based Rising Stars. That way I can chop up the show into videos and have way more content. And yet, for some reason, YouTube hasn't done me in yet. So,
Yeah,
there you
it's been like that for
go.
me too.
Mhm.
Like the viewership's gone down. YouTube just hasn't been. I mean, YouTube just hasn't really been doing much. So yeah, wearing a. So I got this apocalypse. So first time, good to see you. First time seeing you wearing a Bill Cosby shirt, dude. I like Bill Cosby. He- I mean, I like it. I like the stuff that he did. I grew up
Oh
on
yeah,
the
Bill
Cosby Show.
Cosby, B Diddy, P Diddy,
Yeah,
Jonathan Majors, O.J. Simpson, all great talents.
yeah. I mean I mean, with what Bill Cosby did was horrible,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean something similar was going on with. I don't know P Diddy that well. I just remember that he made an appearance in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he used to be called Puff Daddy or something. So I don't really have that connection, but that whole thing, I was reading up on it today. Like he's on suicide watch. He's on freaking suicide watch right now.
Yep.
Like so
He made.
it's like I thought he was just like Bill Cosby, but apparently he's worse because he's now part of he does what he does the trafficking thing, and that's
Well, you remember what I said before? It's not what you know, it's who you know, folks. Well, P.
yeah,
Diddy practically helped a lot of black rappers and hip hop artists get to where they are today. And in exchange, he would fuck them from behind. Literally,
yeah.
there is documented evidence of that.
I read I mean, you read about these things, and it's just like it gets harder and harder to separate the art from the artist. And I had this conversation. I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
Like I can still watch Polanski, Roman
Oh,
Polanski. Like I could still watch. I think one of the greatest movies I've ever seen is The Pianist with Adrian Brody. It's probably been the number two, Holocaust World War II film
mhm.
I've ever seen. It's a number two. It's number two. I don't know. It's one of those movies that's just extremely. I feel like everybody should see it once. And I don't know who's Jonathan Majors. I don't even know who that is, honestly.
He was Kang the
Kang.
Conqueror.
Kang the Conqueror and what?
Yeah, MCU.
Oh, I haven't watched. I haven't watched.
Right.
I haven't watched. I haven't watched any MCU. And it ended with
I don't
Endgame.
blame you.
Well, Endgame had that shot, that very slow shot of all the ladies running line, like in a straight line, running towards the screen. I was like, up, I know where this is going to go. And plus, I was never a big MCU fan. Like I always thought the MCU was a little. I mean, I know I like Winter Soldier was great. I think, and I loved Infinity War. Infinity War was just, there's actually enemies that are giving our heroes a hard time. It makes it more interesting, makes it more exciting, and it feels like the stakes are higher. When you have powerful villains or powerful, characters to overcome. Basically, that's always something I always liked about, especially movies in the 80s. Now with entertainment, like, it's just they make the villains all weak and sniveling, and just like, you're like, how are we supposed to be entertained? Like, they made Sauron a weakling in the Rings of Power season 2. Like, you're talking about Sauron, the Mire, the protege, the most powerful Mire, the protege of the most powerful Valar of all time, Morgoth or Melkor, whatever you call him, everything. So like, making enemies, villains look weak ruins the character, it's like, imagine in Game of Thrones if they made Ramsay Bolton or Ramsay Snow, look like a weakling. It would, like, especially when they finally killed him in season 6, it would not have been so, the payoff would not have been there. It would have not been so sweet.
You need a strong villain. You do need a very strong villain in order to have a strong story, ladies and gentlemen.
In order to get invested, you get invested in the characters when you get invested when there's someone powerful that could kill them or that could destroy them or defeat them. I mean, that's why Khan is such an unforgettable villain, especially in space. He was chosen out of all the episodes from Space Seed, or all episodes from Star Trek, Space Seed, for Harv Bennett to take and make a movie about, bringing that character back, the one that almost defeated Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and nearly took the Enterprise. I mean, it's that type of thing. So I
would have just done like a Doomsday Fleet movie. You think one of those ships was bad? Well, how about a fleet of them destroying creation?
Yeah, exactly. So, but you know how I first came across you, believe it or not? You were on a show called you're on a channel called History with R&R or RR or something. And I think the theme of that, the topic of that stream or video was fascism, the history of fascism. And that's, I think, how I was listening to it. And I think that's how I first encountered you. So I'm curious, like, since you were on that show, like, are you big history buff, big historian, student history type?
Oh, absolutely, especially the modern world history from the beginning of the First World War until today. We exited the War on Terror era when we fucked out of Afghanistan in 2021, and now we're in a new era. I don't know what it's called, but I'm sure in 20 years, if we last that long, we'll find out.
It's a word that rhymes with soak.
Oh, dear. Oh, dearie me. Well, you got the First World War, you got the interwar years, of course, the Second World War. Ooh.
Don't they sometimes call it the Weimar years, in between World War I, World War II, the Weimar years, Weimar Republic or whatever?
The fact that place still exists is a goddamn miracle.
What, Germany?
My view. No, Weimar, because it was named after, the Weimar Republic was named after the village where the Republic was founded, in the village of Weimar. It's an actual place.
I didn't know that. Nice.
Well, there you go. You learned something new.
Yep. I mean, I'm still trying to learn about, I'm trying to relearn European history right now. I've been Lex Friedman did a stream with a history professor from University of Green Bay, and they've been covering the Roman history from the Roman Kingdom, so like 700 BC, all the way through the Empire. And I only got 45 minutes in, but like learning about Hannibal Barca, And Hannibal Barca is the one that, the Carthage, the famous warrior from Carthage that was at war with Rome, and he won every battle, but he was one of those cases where he wins every battle, but he lost the war because Rome just had this ability to replenish their armies. They just kept going. They had this relationship with all the other kingdoms or city states. I don't know. I don't remember exactly. And they would just replenish their people, and they would just form armies after armies, and they would just keep fighting until,
it reminds me of nationalism versus globalism as a battle. No matter how many times we win, our opposition just keeps coming back.
Yep. So yeah, I've been really interested. Shows that I want to get watching. So right now I'm watching Deadwood. So I'm getting a little bit of little post Civil War Reconstruction era. Going on the West Pioneers. You got freaking Al Swearingen, played by Ian McShane, just like offing people because he's trying to build his business in this brand new town in the middle of nowhere, North Dakota, and all that. It's so far I'm really enjoying it, basically. So that's one show I'm currently watching. Another show I watch is Rome. That's another HBO show that covers Julius Caesar up until I forget the name of the battle where Octavian basically becomes he basically beats the Triarchy, and he basically reforms the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire, and he becomes first emperor, Caesar Augustus.
Exactly. So, yeah, that was one hell of a great show. They cut that show short for a very important reason, because they don't want people to learn about it.
Yeah, the 2 seasons. I heard they were going to make more seasons, but they condensed the planned seasons into season 2. So season 2 skipped several years and whatnot. So, but I want to watch that. Some friends of mine have said mixed things about it, but I want to watch that, and then I want to rewatch. And you're going to like this because this is a UK. This is an old BBC show. I Claudius, one of the greatest shows I've ever seen. I want to rewatch that. That is a good show, and let's just say George R. R. Martin owes Robert Graves and I Claudius a lot. I mean, freaking Stannis Baratheon is like a direct copy of Tiberius Caesar, basically.
Well, he can have the RR in his name when he finishes his project.
Exactly.
Unless he dies, then he becomes like the author of Wheel of Time, but much worse.
Yeah, the author of Wheel of Time I'm 5 books in. I've just so I'm going to be starting book 6. Book 6 is considered the pinnacle of the series, and I feel the story really slows down a lot. And I think so based on what I've learned, because of the fact that his books are bestsellers, I think he kept making the story slower and slower, just because every time he wrote a book, he'd make $1 million. And if I were him, I'd probably do the same thing. But there's still good stuff in the books. Book 6. I'm sure I'm gonna like it a lot. But it's a very long series, and I had really high expectations because of my friends who are who may be White Cloaks, who may be Prophets of the Dragon, who may be Mans of Manetheren, all those guys. I know you had Pips on. Have you ever had Prophet on or
we've had
Man of Manetheren?
We haven't had the Man on. We haven't had Salty on. We've had Pips on. We've had Prophet on, and we've had, of course, Nerdporial on. We've had Miss Martin Muses on twice. I mean,
Lady Balefire. What about Lady Balefire?
Yes, we have. I haven't really dabbled much into the high fantasy community recently, because every project they cover is just literal cancer at this point. Rings of Power, Wheel of Time.
It's mainly Wheel of Time. They're doing their rewatches for season 2, because they do basically a mystery science theater approach, and they would basically record themselves in Discord just reacting to every aspect of Wheel of Time. So like season 1, episode 1, I think took them 3 or 4 sessions to get through, because there's so much shit that had to. Yeah, well, they were drinking. They got themselves drunk and silly. So like, and you can hear it. Like that's just how painful it was for them to watch.
I'd rather go into the swamps of Nurgle's Chaos World, to use a Warhammer 40k reference, than to dabble with Wheel of Time. Thankfully, I managed to dodge a bullet with the second season of Rings of Power. In the guy I usually interact with who covers it, Dragon Slayer Commentaries, because of his schedule, he can't now host his own show.
Yeah.
Which led me to taking it over for an episode, and I'm like, fuck, I'm not doing 3 shows on Saturday. So we're not covering Lord of the Rings of White Power, season 2. And thank goodness for that. The high fantasy community is in such a bad state because of the nonsense that they need to cover. And to put the cherry on top with gaming as well,
Yeah.
seeing the latest that's coming out of Dragon Age Veilguard, I don't even want to touch it. It's that heartbreaking that they're destroying that game. And it's good to see Dredd Roberts. He's more than earned his growth as an established creator. And fingers crossed someday soon he'll get that silver play button, which is reduced in size now. Drunk 3PO will tell you that. And
really?
Hopefully he gets the thing, the silver play button and the gold play button got reduced in size.
No way.
Because too many people were getting them.
That's crazy. But yeah, the whole thing with the gaming, I'm really glad. I mean, this is one of those cases where I'm generally of the opinion that if you try to speak out and nobody listens to you, like for instance Disney with Disney Star Wars. I mean, I literally said to Doomcock on X, I was like, are you sure you want to keep doing this? Basically keep covering this, because it doesn't seem like they're listening to anybody, and it's just going to drive you. It's like they're to go crazy, so that you just you stop doing what you're doing and all that.
I would have agreed to that mindset, Nerdporial, before they canceled The Acolyte, because Disney and the BBC are the two only companies who can have consistent projects that are complete bombs, complete dead-on arrival projects, and still run them because of how vast of companies they are, whether from a financial perspective with Disney or the fact that the BBC has the license fee to parasite off of until the end of time, Wheel of Time, End of Time, one of those. And for Disney to say, nah, we're culling The Acolyte, I think that caused a shock among Disney shills, which led to the demonetization campaign. And they always target the moderate ones. They never target the most effective or the most extreme. They always target the more moderate, most welcoming, most prominent creators first.
Because I'm guessing just because it's easy, because they they feel they can bully, they can walk all over Star Wars Theory. I mean, yes, I know all about that. I mean, I haven't watched Star Wars Theory in a while until all this stuff happened. I know there's been issues with Star Wars Explained with other content creators in the past. So, because I used to listen to Star Wars Explained, get some lore, get some decent lore videos out of them. So, this was years ago. This is like 2016. So this was way before I was, a YouTuber. Even before. Well, I started noticing things were going cuckoo with choices that were made for productions that were being called out. So, but that's not neither here nor there. But Star Wars Theory. I mean, I found him because of his Vader thing, his Vader episode, which was awesome. Like, I really enjoyed it. And this was so long ago. When that came out. This was like 2018. I told my boss about it when I was at work, and he was playing it. He was playing it in the office, and he had the volume all the way up. So, I mean, it was that good. And then even before that, I don't know if did you ever see the remade scene? Was it 37 of? Did you ever see that, the remade scene 37 of the original Star Wars?
Yes, when Obi-Wan and Vader
fight,
clashed.
Yes, more in line with like the prequel, more in line with the prequels and all that, but it's just more brutal. Like Vader freaking punches Obi-Wan in the face. But that was awesome. That was good stuff. And then that comes out the same time as Disney Star Wars stuff, and they're just Disney Star Wars is just overshadowed by these fan projects. And what's weird is it's such a common thing now. I mean, I'm going to go further. I'm going to go a little bit step further. I don't know how much of an anime person you are, but there's a series called Berserk that came out a long time ago. I used to watch it when I was in college. I had the DVDs. Then they made a sequel series back in 2016, 2017, and it's literally utter trash. Like they adapted the was it the Conviction arc, and it looks like total utter trash. And so they made that, and then of course a few years ago the manga creator passed away. So we're like, okay, they're not going to finish this. Well, we find out that the manga creator had a friend who knows the ending. So the friend, who also was a manga writer, took over the project, and he's been putting out stuff on a regular basis. Well, they haven't really made a whole lot of stuff in terms of anime thing until anime adaptation, until some studio just like, we want to make a fan project. We want to make a fan project because we love Berserk. And we're gonna try to adapt the manga as it was. So they're gonna try and adapt the first 3 volumes, the Black Swordsman arc, which was never truly adapted. And I was like, I saw that and I got excited, but then they got a cease and desist letter, and they had to stop. And it broke my heart, because it's just like, the Japanese are very. One thing I learned about from the comments in the on X and all that, the Japanese are very. Even the consumers are like, how dare you steal our product? That's our thing. How dare you steal it? And Western fans are just like, what are you talking about? What are you talking? Like, seriously, like, honestly, the only mistake that they made, I thought they couldn't make money off of it, but apparently you can't take money. You can't do a fundraiser. You can't say, hey, can you guys help us? You have to provide the money yourself. I think that's what Star Wars Theory had to do. He couldn't ask for money for help to make his project. That's why he's working on episode 2 now after 6 years. So I mean,
that's why loopholing is very important, folks. That's why you got to use your noggin, read the room, and find the loophole. Oh, we can't raise any money. Okay, then we'll source it from our own sources. Wait a few years, stay under the radar, rake in those donations, as a content creator or a hub of content creation. And then suddenly let everyone know, hey, we've got the funds now. We Freudian slip. We've got enough money now to run this. Don't have me announce it, okay?
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. You just be smart about it. You got to be smart about it. So, but yeah, that's pretty much that's what's been that's what's been going on with me with this. And yeah, the sci-fi. I've been, I don't know if have you ever tried to watch really deep science fiction to the point where it's like really hard to pay attention, hard to stay awake. So I don't know. There's a Soviet Russian director named Andrei Tarkovsky, who was big in the 60s, 70s. He died in the 80s. He did 2 science fiction films that are way out there. One's called Solaris. They made a remake in the 2000s with George Clooney. I think Steven Soderbergh directed. I still haven't seen that one, but Tarkovsky made the 1972 version, which was basically his response to Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. So unlike 2001, which was hopeful about humanity's future, traveling the stars and all that, Solaris is the opposite. So Solaris is a film adaptation of a book by Stanislav Lem. I talked about this last week with Wakizashi Sea House. So apparently, in this story, mankind tries to venture into the stars, but they can't really figure out how to communicate with new life, and it gets to a point where mankind starts to lose interest in exploring the cosmos, and it's a more pessimistic look. So it's like to me, it would be like an anti-Star Trek type of thing.
Oh,
so instead of like the one of the lines in that movie is basically, mankind does not know what to do with other worlds. Mankind is not interested in other worlds. Mankind just is only interested in mirrors. In other words, mankind is only interested in projecting itself into the cosmos, which, I mean, I'll be honest, most science fiction is like that. Even Star Trek is like that, because we are projecting ourselves into everything. I mean, Klingons,
Well,
Romulans.
You can't really sell a class struggle to a little green man, though, Nerdporial. I mean,
or an ocean planet, which is
yes,
or a living ocean planet, which is what Solaris is.
it's just very strange that, of course, communists have a pessimistic view of space, because when they tried to get to the moon, they crashed. But of the signals they received, that is, if you believe the official narrative, from the signals they received, they found that because of the solar radiation, none of their cosmonauts would survive staying on the moon, because all the solar radiation would kill their cosmonauts, so they wouldn't be able to come back. So that could showcase the rather pessimistic view the Soviets had, because they tried and they failed. That is, if you believe the official narrative around the whole moon landing situation. But the point is, ladies and gentlemen, you're seeing that kind of pessimism today when you've got demon rat bastards trying to use legalese to stop Elon Musk from setting his rockets up, and away, because they don't want him to become Mars King and to declare war on Earth.
I was going to ask about that. So the SEC. So was it because he bought Twitter, or is it SpaceX, or is it a SpaceX issue?
That's another one. Both, to answer your question, Nerdporial. Elon failed to appear at one of their meetings to discuss, the acquisition of Twitter for $44 billion. Irregularities around it being bought, because let's face it, folks, the man bought it on a whim, and not many people buy things for $44 billion on a whim. So of course they're going to. I would investigate that, because that is not normal. No normal multi-billionaire would do that for the sake of what the establishment thinks is freedom of speech, because they don't believe in it. So why do they think their opposition do? But that's one of the things they're trying to get him for. Him and his team made it clear, no, it's just being rescheduled to another day because of Elon's schedule. You think our schedules are bad? His is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
But another thing.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry, keep going.
Well, another thing that they're trying to nail him down for is, him and his groups, allegedly bypassing environmental safety laws so that they can get their rockets up in the sky, which, of course, Elon and his team deny. And he also puts over the fact that it's quicker for him and his teams to build new rockets to prepare to go to the sky and into space and into probably even to the moon. It's quicker to build them than it is for the administration to formalize and legalize the previous Starship rocket that they've built from being cleared to go up there, which just goes to show that one philosopher king leading the way with his various groups is far more effective than this Byzantine-esque bureaucracy trying to just choke everything to death through red tape. It's Caesar and his Rome versus the last bloody emperor of the Byzantine Empire as Constantinople was falling to bits. That's the comparison.
I don't know a whole lot about Byzantine history, but I'm taking it there's loads of intrigue, loads of deception. I'm kind of
loads
excited,
of red tape, loads of bureaucracy. That is a term, Byzantine bureaucracy, because the final stage of the Roman Empire, allegedly, was the Eastern Roman Empire that we in Europe called Byzantine, because we had our own Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah.
But that slowly but surely died over the course of centuries because they put the administration over the success of the empire, just like the United States and many parts of the Western world.
Is that why the Ottomans conquered them really easily?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Ottomans were just a small force in what is now Turkey, which is their homeland. and they managed to unite all of Anatolia along with their Islamic allies
Yeah.
to take Anatolia, to then crush the Byzantine Empire and eventually unite all the Muslims under the Ottoman Empire until they went the
Where
way
did
of the
now?
Turks.
I know. So did they just call themselves Byzantine Empire because of because the
No,
original
they
name for
didn't.
Constantinople was Byzantium, and that's
Well,
they just took that name instead of calling themselves the Eastern Roman Empire.
it was imposed upon them. They actually considered themselves to be the Roman Empire, especially when the Western Roman Empire fell. The Eastern Roman Empire survived, so within
Yeah.
its borders, they still called themselves Rome, even as Constantinople was falling. But outsiders, especially Europeans, didn't see them as the Roman Empire, so they called them the Byzantine Empire, especially the Holy Roman Empire, which was set up in Germany, the Alps, northern Italy, and of course the Papal See with Rome. So there you go, more history.
That's yeah. So yeah, that's I've been trying to relearn stuff, and there's a lot of stuff I just don't know. Like Holy
Mhm.
Roman Empire, like I don't even remember how that formed. And I remembered, oh, I learned about Charlemagne, I learned about the Frankish Empire before that, and that's I think that's what kind of led or set up the
Hmm.
Gadfly Fiction would know. He's a student of history
Oh,
and
yeah.
literature, so he would know.
Oh, the
But
Franks. I mean, West Francia and East Francia. West Francia became France, and East
yeah,
Francia became ultimately Germany. So
yeah.
there you go.
So I got a question: was the Catholic Church always were they weren't always situated in the Vatican, right? Didn't they like shift headquarters or something?
Well, as far as I'm aware, the Papal See was one of the main reasons why Italy never really formed as a kingdom until the wars of independence against the Holy Roman Empire and against the Kingdom of Austria and
Hmm.
against the Papal See itself. So
Yeah,
I knew that so long as the Papal See was in power in Rome, Italy
yeah,
could never unify. That's why the Pope and his priests had to give up almost all of its territory in
yeah.
order for Italy to be founded. But I think the Roman Catholicism as a thing always stayed in Rome. It was essentially Rome plus Jesus equals Roman Catholics. It was a way for the Roman Empire to accept Christianity, but also try to stay Roman, but it didn't really work.
Speaking of staying Roman, what's up,
Hmm.
Roman?
I hope your wife's not beating you.
Yeah, me and Roman got a Chilporial schedule. I won't say when,
Ooh,
but we got one. We got one scheduled
good.
next month. So yeah, he's gonna be on. So I mean,
I say that.
I have been thinking about the Roman Empire lately, Roman.
Well,
Okay, that was
I
weird.
say that for I can never say this word. I always say that facetiously, Roman, but I do have the feeling that your wife is a bit dominant. That's why she says, "Off to the garage with you when you start streaming."
That's great. Oh, so but
Mhm,
going back to um, going back to
mhm,
politics and all that. Just you said demon rats and we were talking about Elon earlier. Could compare Elon to a philosopher king.
mhm.
Now I think philosopher king I think that was started with was it Socrates or
No, it
Plato
was a
or
plate.
Aristotle that came
It
up with that
was
idea?
a Platonic term, a term of
So
Plato,
Plato,
in which he believed that
the
you
ideal
could
king would be rooted in
a philosopher
philosophy and
essentially.
you ever
It's
see
very well. It is very strange, though, Brian, how the great philosophers of ancient times all despised the concept of democracy. Socrates was
yes.
killed by a democracy.
Hmm.
Plato utterly despised the idea of democracy, which is
Oh,
why he pushed for the philosopher kings. And of course, Aristotle had his own individualistic ideas, which led to aristocracy.
was oh yeah,
Hmm.
I didn't know that.
That's
Just
where
like
it comes from. I mean, the elite,
Aristotle aristocracy.
yeah,
Duh.
the elite that build their own fortunes and their own success were considered the aristocrats, not the people who inherited the success. So that's the true form of aristocracy. The kind you guys rebelled against in the U.S. was more of the inherited aristocracy of the British elite.
I forget, were they all Athenian? Aristotle, Plato,
Yes.
Socrates, they were all democracy is an Athenian
Yes, they
concept,
had
right?
in ancient Athens they had a primitive form of democracy that we don't use anymore called direct democracy, in
Yeah.
which citizens who owned property who were male had the right to vote, and they would all gather together and they would all speak about topics of the day and policies of the day, and they would vote then and there what to do. And
I
some
was I
people did
I was going to
go
ask
on.
about the structure of
Hmm.
ancient Greece democracy. So it was basically any asshole that owned property, basically,
Hmm.
whether or not they were informed or low
Hmm.
information.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that's why I found, folks, because not everyone in what we consider to be ancient Greece agreed with that concept. You had the Spartans in the Isle of Sparta who believed in martial rule. He who fights the hardest wins, and for a time
Yeah.
they dominated Greece, but they ultimately met their end. As for Athens, ancient Athens, there were some who disagreed with the ideas of democracy. Most of them were taught by Socrates. No wonder they had him eventually killed, because the democratic model was overthrown by the tyrants who
Hmm.
were almost all taught by Socrates.
Yeah.
Those tyrants then invited Socrates into their system, and he was like, nah, he just wanted to teach and talk to people. And
Yeah.
then once those tyrants were overthrown, the more democratic minded people came back into power, blamed Socrates for the tyrants rising, locked him up, and then he killed himself. Now, Plato, being like the chief student of Socrates, was like, shit, I gotta run. And he did. He escaped, and he was the guy who wrote everything down.
Yeah,
All
so
written down.
Socrates didn't write. He did not. Did he know how to write, or did he? So he was just he had the gift of oration, basically, and
Hmm.
so and plus wasn't he like poisoning the minds of the youngsters, basically?
That was what he was accused of, because
Yeah.
the people he taught, the first people he taught, became the tyrants
Yeah.
who took over and then got overthrown. Plato was one of his chief students who would write everything he said down,
Yeah.
almost to the letter, and then interpret it in his own ways through his own stories. And that's why people kind of like Plato over Aristotle, because there's a lot more material, and a lot more of that material survived compared to Aristotle's.
I've been hearing a lot of people like just praising Aristotle. I'm just curious. Now I know Plato. I know there's
Mm-hmm.
Plato's Republic. That's probably I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that's his most famous work or something. I'm sure there's other ones. He wrote a whole bunch, but I'm curious what Aristotle has written.
Well,
That's because I know Aristotle focus goes more into like obviously
mm-hmm.
he covers philosophy, but he also covers math. He's one of the
Mm-hmm.
earliest scientists, scientific method
Oh, he
and
was
all that.
the scientist, because
Yeah,
Aristotle was the student of Plato.
yeah,
He was one of Plato's best students in Plato's academy, despite the fact that he was one of the biggest critics of Plato, because one of the main justifications Plato had for his beliefs was this world of the forms. It's kind of like a world of ideals. Think of a chair. In Plato's mind, you'd think of the ideal chair, the best chair, or the ideal state, the
yeah.
ideal ruler. Whereas with Aristotle, it was all about first principles. What is a chair? Why is a chair? That sort of thing. So he would always
Hmm.
identify what something was, what it was made of, and what its use was.
So
So you could,
more matter of fact
yes,
than Plato.
because with Plato, he would, likewise with Socrates, he would spread ideas through a mixture of information and entertainment,
Yeah,
storytelling. parables and all that sort of thing. That's why Aristotle was really the first main philosopher who would, understand the elements of earth, wind, and fire, that sort of thing. And that's why when you compare the two, Aristotle is the more level-headed of the two.
Yeah.
But Plato was and still is a lot more convincing. First of all, there's a lot more material. And let's face it, folks, of that material, Plato is far more convincing, just like Socrates was far more convincing, because he would play on people's emotions, he would tell good stories, and he was half an entertainer, half an informer. Of all the written documents Aristotle has left, most of them are just lecture notes of him, teaching his students and taking notes from them. He was really dry writer, not an entertainer.
So who preceded Socrates? Like who
Oh,
taught
there are a
Socrates?
lot. There are a lot. I mean, Thales was one of the earliest philosophers who believed everything was water. Literally everything. Its basis is in water. Now, for human beings, he couldn't have been more right, but in terms of everything else, maybe not. There was also another philosopher that believed everything was fire, which was very interesting. A lot of pre-Socratic philosophers were the type of intellectuals who would just throw everything against the wall and saw what stuck.
I see. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, like I've never really learned anything prior to Socrates, but then again, I took one class of philosophy in college. That was my final elective before I graduated. So I haven't really taken. The last time I learned any history was, believe it or not, high school. So all my knowledge that I'm talking right now is either stuff I remember from high school or stuff I've actually done my own research on.
American education. How are you breathing?
Yeah, product of the Chicago public school system on top of that. So, yeah.
I think the only time Plato really got schooled was by a philosopher called, I think it was Diogenes, when Plato theorized that a human being was nothing but a plucked chicken. And then Diogenes literally found a chicken, plucked it in front of everyone, then showed it to everyone.
Yeah.
According to Plato, this is a human. And everyone laughed at Plato.
That's funny.
It's really the first time he really got condemned for, because it was like a story. Because when you really think about it, chicken, wings or arms, their little feet are our feet. They've got a face. The body structure is very similar, but beyond that, they're not really the same. Yeah.
So I gotta go. We have to go back to Elon. So I forget. Did you say Elon is like the closest thing to a philosopher king?
Oh, he's not the closest thing. There are plenty of examples of the philosopher king mindset. You see it with Donald Trump. You see it with Elon Musk. You see it with El Salvador's president. What was his name? Nayib Bukele, who literally describes himself as the philosopher king of El Salvador on his Twix page, which is really something. The kind of best of both worlds between a democracy and a dictatorship. That kind of speak truth to power, lead from the front, do what must be done, find a problem, solve the damn problem, and hopefully it doesn't cause other problems. And I think, personally, Elon Musk is a great example of that from a more private sector-minded individual, whereas Nayib Bukele in El Salvador is a great example of that philosopher king in terms of actual government. Because before he got elected, El Salvador was one of the most dangerous places in the world to live. Now it's one of the safest.
And it's fun, because he jailed every gang. There's so many gangs there, and what's funny is the gangs. I think half of the gangs came from L.A. They came from LA and they were deported or they came back to El Salvador. And the people, what's funny is the people were happy. Like the people were happy that this happened, that this was that they finally took those people off the streets. There's I don't know if you've ever seen The Wire. There's a moment in The Wire, HBO, in season 3, where in Baltimore, one of the police captains, one of the unit captains or something, basically transplants all the criminals to another part of the city, and all the people, and he got in a lot. He ends up getting in a lot of trouble for that. But the people that were in that part of the city that they removed the criminals were happy. Like, it was no longer dangerous to go outside, no longer any string bullets and all that. So it's funny, and I've heard that, like, Bukele, or the El Salvador guy, president, has, like, not a great relationship with what the hell's that? What's our Secretary of State's name? Blinken. Yeah.
Blinken, you'll miss, which is what he does.
Yeah, like, he's just like, what are you doing? You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing that. And I'm just like, oh man, I swear that sometimes I think this. Let's get political now. This administration has no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
No, of course not. And I have to give credit to the Latin American countries who see a golden opportunity in, basically getting it, because some countries, especially Mexico, have taken the idea of, let's just get rid of our criminals and just force them north as much as we can.
I mean, you saw Scarface. I mean, how'd I learn about that? Cuba doing that. Scarface, 1983. Fidel Castro sent all emptied his jails, sent them all to Miami, sent them all to the Miami area.
They're not eating pets in El Salvador, folks. They're not. The United States has become a laughingstock because it is not prepared to do what needs to be done to ensure not only it survives, but that it thrives. One of the main reasons why El Salvador is one of the safest countries in the world now is because their executive have done what they needed to do to really bring crime down, and to ensure that if you fuck with us, you're going down. And when they captured these people, because they didn't arrest them, literally captured them, for a good few months, it was like a war. The country was a war zone, for goodness sake. But once these people were captured, they were rehabilitated. They weren't put into private prisons to be a form of slave labor. They were re-educated and they were remolded to be productive members of society. And in some instances, with the top leadership of those gangs, they were given administrative positions so that their know-how could be used to better the country while bettering themselves. So it's a little bit of carrot and a little bit of stick. But you can't do that in the civilized West. We have to win the war on drugs. We have to make money from those private prisons to ensure that the money flows. Because you need the problems to provide the solutions which are financially beneficial. That's why a financially based world is coming to an end, because it's responsible for as many problems today as the solutions that are being put forward.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on that. I think that they create these problems so that, hey, I have a solution. It's like watching the Stooges, and the Stooges are freaking exterminators. And what do? There's no work. So what do? They infest the house with rats and mice and ants and all that. And then hey, we're here to fix your problem, And that's kind of what I feel. And that's how I feel about the whole issue with racism. Racism. I mean, it still exists. I think, like violence, racism is something that every human being is capable of, even unconsciously, consciously or subconsciously, but it's not as big of a thing. So they have to amplify things. They have to come up, or they have to amplify things. They have to blow certain situations out of proportion. And that's kind of where I want to go with the main question of this CHILLPOREAL. Sure. Am I racist?
Yes.
Am I a racist? And
Yes.
yeah, apparently, apparently, I
I
am.
am a
So
racist. You are a racist. Everyone watching is a racist. As long as the concept of race exists, then the concept of racism will exist. So long as humanity exists with all of its differences, there will always be a way to showcase that difference from a positive or from a negative perspective. As long as sex exists, sexism will exist. As long as homosexuality exists, homophobia will exist. Likewise with transgenderism, transphobia will exist.
yeah,
Why? Simply because of the fact that there's action and reaction. When
yeah,
something exists, something will oppose it on
yeah.
any grounds, whether it be environmental grounds, social grounds, or biological grounds. And you will have this struggle, ladies and gentlemen.
That's very Newtonian of you to say,
Yes.
Ryan. Third Newton's third law. Every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Hmm.
Well, maybe not equal. I don't know. It varies. It varies with people. So,
Well, compare Rhodesia with Zimbabwe, and then you can have an analysis.
so yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, who's so who's was it was Mugabe the entire was the president the entire time Zimbabwe existed?
Yeah, until recent years,
Yeah,
before he was eventually deposed, and then he finally died.
yeah.
Um,
Didn't he live to be like he was dictator from the time
he's
he was 70 to like till he was 100. He
he
was that
he
old.
ruled he ruled from 1980 until about
20.
2018,
Yeah,
2019.
it's crazy.
He said he was in his 90s towards the end of his life, but he didn't look it. And let's face it, folks, back when he was born, their kind was so uncivilized they didn't know when he was fucking born, so he just made it up.
Yeah. But yeah, Rhodesia. I mean, I'm assuming Rhodesia was ran by Europeans. I don't know.
Yes.
I know South Africa has like the Afrikaans
Yes.
from Holland, I believe.
Yes.
What European nation was really responsible for Rhodesia?
Britain.
Was UK? Okay,
And specifically, not the British government. A single British person was responsible for the creation of Rhodesia, of conquering a territory as large as Western Europe in Africa. One man. His name was Cecil Rhodes. In fact, if I put my camera up, you can actually see Rhodes.
I
There's a
see
book
it.
about him, about his life. I'm not going to take it down because I don't want it to fall on me and kill me potentially. But that
It's
man,
like Principal Skinner with the newspapers in the garage. Like he went missing because all the newspapers fell on him. They thought Bart had him murdered by the mob in that one. So
I
so
know this
if
state.
Ryan goes missing, it's because his books and his Blu-rays fell
There's
on top of him.
there's a reason we don't have a book tower anymore. But in all
Yeah,
seriousness, folks, and this is going to piss off the progressives, Cecil Rhodes was a 19th century version of Elon Musk. Of course, some communists call him Africa's Hitler, but that just goes to show how much a difference of opinion there is. A man who made his fortune in gold and diamonds in South Africa decided to defy and trick the British government into allowing him to, for lack of a better word, invade and conquer what is now Zambia and Zimbabwe, formerly known as Northern and Southern Rhodesia, with Zimbabwe being Southern Rhodesia, Zambia being Northern Rhodesia. And those two countries were his until his death. And then they were given to the British government because he was a British citizen and it
yeah,
became an imperial territory. To boil this down, after the Second World War, British Empire in retreat, we were fucking bleeding out and broke. We couldn't
yeah,
sustain the empire without destroying our homeland. So a lot of places in the world, in the British Empire, were getting independence.
yeah,
Zambia got their independence first, and that's Northern Rhodesia. But Southern Rhodesia, which was run by British people in the country, the white minority, was like, no, we're not giving up our rule. we have a civilized society, one of the most successful in Africa, and we're not giving it to, let's face it, a bunch of brown communists backed by the Soviet Union, which Mugabe and his crew were. So instead of Britain saying, because Britain ran by a left-wing Labour government, made it clear to Rhodesia,
this is before Thatcher?
Yes, this was way before. This was in the 60s. They basically made it clear that if you don't declare independence, if you don't give up your rule, then we're going to come in and take it from you. And the Rhodesians were like, well, fuck that. Let's unilaterally declare independence, which is what they did in I think it was late 1965, and they managed to hold on for 15 years. They faced international sanctions from across the entire world. They faced an armed occupation of brown communists, and their only supporters were South Africa and the Portuguese, who controlled Angola and Mozambique through that period, and they wanted to hold on to their colonies. So for 15 years, most of planet Earth were trying to fuck Rhodesia up the rear end. And for the most part, they were holding their own pretty well. As
so you said there was a lot of diamonds and a lot of gold,
yes, there was a lot of
precious metals, and
there was a lot of natural resources in Rhodesia. And even to this day, Brian, Zimbabwe is a beautiful country, full of natural resources. It could easily be the breadbasket of Africa, easily, if it was managed properly. It hasn't been managed properly in decades, but it still has that potential, despite their present government's best efforts.
Is it just like almost every government in Africa is just that damn corrupt or something? That's why they're also poor, and it's still, I mean, the whole.
And South Africa is another example of this. The most powerful country in Africa in the 20th century, and had nuclear weapons. That was one of the reasons why the Americans or the Soviets didn't invade South Africa to take out the white government there, was because they had a nuclear deterrent.
Oh, they had nuclear capability? No way.
They had nuclear weapons. Yeah,
I did want to ask, this is something I've been meaning to research on. I always hear about apartheid. You always hear about Nelson Mandela, but where did apartheid come from? Like, where did that? I mean, what was the catalyst that brought on apartheid in the first place?
Well, as far as I remember, I think it came definitely after the Second World War, and it was a way of ensuring that the minority wouldn't get wiped out by the majority. Because let's face it, folks, democratic system. Majority wins. They can do whatever they like, including wiping out a minority. You also have to consider that minority had a lot of power, had a lot of property, and they wanted to keep that power and property. And in South Africa's case, up until the fall of communism, they were willing to do whatever it took to hold on to that power. So they created the system of apartheid in order to maintain that system. And it was modeled on the system that the United States had, which the United States had since the end of the Civil War. So there was a legal precedent for this, although you could use the same argument with Germany's race laws, because they were based on the United States as well, the racial segregation laws.
Jim Crow,
Yeah. And so they decided to stick with it, and they faced international sanctions, just like Rhodesia did when Rhodesia became independent in the 60s. And South Africa held on because they didn't want their country being ruled, for lack of a better term, by brown communists. And yes, Nelson Mandela thankfully took a more peaceful approach, getting locked up for decades.
I learned he bombed. I heard he bombed, like, if I remember correctly, and I didn't learn this in high school. I learned this, as an adult, that he actually, I don't think he killed anybody, but he did bomb like a building or something like that. And that's why he got arrested. And that's why he got arrested for 30 years. See, when I was in school, I was taught he got arrested just because he was a peaceful activist that was a danger, but there was more to it. So I'm curious, so that's kind of where it was just kind of like, I don't know, like there's a lot of praise for Mandela.
Oh yes, there was a lot of praise for him, especially when it became a more peaceful movement because it was a lot easier to manage from a propaganda point of view.
Yeah.
But starting out the uprisings, him and his band of merry men cut power in all of South Africa and nearly brought the country to its knees. It was considered an act of sedition. He also killed, along with his guerrillas, managed to kill many South African militarymen, both black and white. And, you know, when you're charged with treason, you get the death penalty. It's the same in the United States and in the United Kingdom. Even to this day, he was spared the death penalty and given life imprisonment because the South Africans didn't want to make a martyr of him. But
was the ANC, the African National Congress, I learned this in high school, were they considered, would you consider them a terrorist?
They were. In fact,
in
fact, the British government considered the ANC a terrorist group until 1990. And that was mostly driven by the fact that we had a lot of, well, economic relations with South Africa. Britain was actually one of the few countries in the world that was still trading with South Africa. And from Britain, the South Africans could, you know, find the loopholes and get all the resources they need. So Britain was one of the reasons it lasted so very long.
Why did was it just political pressure? Why did de Klerk release Mandela in the 90s?
A mix of political pressure and one key event, the fall of communism. One of the greatest
91. Yeah,
one of the greatest fears. Because one of the greatest fears that the white South Africans had was that South Africa would fall under communism, like an ethnic communism, so black ethnic communism. And then with the backing of the Soviet Union, this new communist South Africa would just go around killing whites in this blood feud revenge, which did happen in Zimbabwe in the 80s, because Mugabe was a dictator, a socialist dictator backed by the Soviet Union. They didn't want that. So when communism came to an end, they decided in South Africa, let's have a peaceful transition of power. They managed to achieve that, which, by God, was a goddamn miracle. And they managed to transition into a democracy. And certainly during the Mandela administration, things were doing well. When he decided to leave and retire early, like a black George Washington, then it started to fall down. Why? Because the more militant parts of the ANC wanted to basically run the show for their own sake. And there's certainly been some back and forth over the years. In fact, today, there are two new political parties in South Africa that split from the ANC. Why? Because they don't think the ANC is extreme enough. The economic freedom fighters, literally black communists, and this recent new group created by the former ANC leader Jacob Zuma, who was kicked out of the ANC for being too corrupt. Well, he took a third of the party with him. That's how corrupt he was. So there's definitely a lot of fracturing in the ANC, and South Africa is fracturing at the seams today. 30 years. It's been 30 years. That's all it takes.
I know. That's crazy. I don't know how many, like apartheid still is talked about as like, oh, you evil people and all that, and then it's like compared to, people talk about apartheid to people talk about Nazis, and that seems to be all people know about. And then of course people talk about racism. So I got to ask you, Ryan, since to talk about the topic of the video, what is racism? Like, am I forever going to be a racist? Like, am I like subconsciously racist? Do I have white fragility?
Guess what I have in my hand right now?
What you got in your hand?
It's a book.
Why?
This is literally a children's book from the.
It looks like 90s. It looks like 1990s.
Yeah, it is. It is quite an old book. Why are people racist? And I think these books are absolutely essential now. In fact, it was made in 2001 by Kath Senker. Here she is, very, very dapper lady for the early 2000s. And it basically explains what racism is from the perspective of 2001 America slash Europe. And they go through what is racism and what it basically is. Let's see if I can. There we go. What is racism? According to this book, made in 2001, racism is when people think badly of a particular group for no just reason. Keyword there, just reason. This is called prejudice, prejudging people. The literal word, prejudge. To have a prejudice means to prejudge someone, as I just said, to make up your mind about a person before you know anything about them.
That doesn't sound. Wait, that doesn't sound right at all. Where's the whites are only racist? Where's the you have to have power structure in order to be racist? Where's that?
Oh, there's more though. There's more.
Oh,
people can be prejudiced against others for various reasons. For example, some people hate beggars on the street because they think they are too lazy to work. Some people are prejudiced against people from a different ethnic group, a set of people who share their own common culture, traditions, and sometimes language. Which just goes to show, folks, we had a far better grasp of what racism was in 2001. And this was for fucking children, folks. This was for young children growing up in primary and secondary schools, explaining what racism is in 2001.
It seems like a lot of those same children, I mean, my age, people my age, and boomers are still children to this day, especially the way you see them behave on social media.
Well, you're gonna remember, Brian. Quite simple. Remember, this was before the age of wokeness. This was before the age of weaponized weakness. And if you search this woman's name, Kath Senker, I bet if she's still alive, I will bet you she's been indoctrinated by this nonsense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
If she has, and if she's still alive, I don't know, it's been 23 years, but if she is still alive and she has embraced wokeness and only whites can be racist and all that bullshit, I will quote her own fucking words.
Yeah. No. I totally believe what you just said. I totally can buy what you just said because, I mean, let's face it. Everybody knows I'm a big Star Trek fan. Everybody knows what Star Trek used to represent. But you have, I mean, now, do you give a shit about the actors? Probably not. But what's funny is the writers of shows like Deep Space Nine and Next Generation have also embraced this stuff that they didn't even consider back then. So
it's an infection. It's an infectious agent. We have to treat this as a disease. And how do you face these people who have been infected, who have been indoctrinated? It's the mirror of their own work.
Yeah, I've literally just like the last couple of days I hate engaging Trek actors. I follow a whole bunch of them on social media. Now I'm unfollowing them because they're pieces of shit. Like I literally told John Delancey today on Facebook. I'm like, dude, you're part of the problem. You left X because you're calling a whole bunch of people bigots and racists and all that. I'm just like, I was just listening. I mean, I was just listening to the Daryl Davis and Joe Rogan thing, and how Daryl Davis, who talked to Klansmen, like big time Klansmen, was able to have a conversation with them. I mean, he kind of tricked them into having a conversation with them by not saying they were black, but that's beside the point. He was able to have a conversation with these people and talk to them in a way that didn't, I forget how he put it, but he didn't like completely disregard their reality and everything. He just basically offered another example of, or he offered another way of thinking.
Exactly. And I have to say, Brian, quite simply, a lot of the opposition towards the establishment is based upon the fact that they are the forgotten people. We are the forgotten people in this day and age, especially when it comes to topics of the day. To mention Star Trek actors, I know plenty of people don't like John Delarose, but I've had good talks with him in the past. To see John Delarose, a person I have spoken to on more than one occasion and had good talks with, interacting with good old Picardo, the EMH himself.
Yep,
Both,
I've
yeah, the
unfollowed him
both
too.
the
Yep.
both of them going back and forth in regards to topics of the day related to Star Trek and state of affairs in the United States. It just goes to show the contrasting nature of our world today. Because 20 odd years ago, 25 years ago, conversation like that would never happen between
Yeah.
a robust agent of the entertainment establishment against this up and coming, established creator who is loved by some and despised by others. That would never have happened. It just goes to show now that the establishment and the Alliance of Alternatives are toe to toe, and they're both people I respect in terms of what they've done throughout their careers. I hate using that term because I don't see what we do as a career, but it just goes to show that the changing nature of our society and of our culture, and where the wind is blowing. Because this didn't happen 25 years ago. It's happening now. Where will we be in 25 years' time? The concept of an actor won't exist. Just like journalist, and hopefully just like politician. They'll all be things of the past, and
Yeah.
it will be we, the people, who act, who
Yes.
document things as journalists would, or represent the people as politicians should. But
I mean,
don't.
we're getting into this because of the internet. I've said this earlier. The fact that there's an internet, the fact that
Ooh.
there's more people, the fact that there's more people with more knowledge, there's less ignorance, and people are just learning to see through people, seeing through others, seeing through bullshit, is what is basically where I think the shift is truly beginning, and I'm really grateful for this, but I have to address this. So Tatsusama for 50 CHF. So I looked up CHF. That's Swiss francs. So that's like, let me look. Okay, so 50 Swiss francs. That's basically $58.80. 80. Wait, sorry, $58. Sorry, I'm Ryan Roger Athay.
Blooper.
Got blooper. $58.80 US dollars. So thank you. Now what can I do? Maybe I'll spend that money. You saw the movie, right? So I could start a fund to help disconnect me from my whiteness. I'm going to start going to seminars where these really intelligent ladies, starting with Robin DiAngelo and all these other people, and just I'll start bettering myself by trying to start my hero's journey into the world of anti-racism. So Tatsusama, thank you. So I one thing I liked about this movie, Am I Racist? I saw it yesterday. I liked that he went out of his way to, every time he had an interview. So he didn't just unlike What Is a Woman? He didn't just ask questions to the point where they started figuring out and then they just left. Nobody left. So anytime he had an interview, nobody left. So he interviewed the girl remember the girl that yelled at the two dudes in the college library. Do you remember that?
No.
Because she was like, "Oh, you two are Caucasian and you're in our space and all that." You don't remember that? Well,
No.
he interviewed that girl that was doing that stuff. He interviews Robin DiAngelo. So the whole thing was building up to Robin DiAngelo, and then he decides, I'm going to go to Chicago. I'm going to stay in Chicago. It's winter out, and he's like, you know what? I want to get a Subway. I want to go and get a Subway. And then he starts thinking about. Then we see the great. We see the Jussie Smollett interview that he did, where he's describing his truth, his trauma, and they reenacted with Matt Walsh, except this time the mask guys are two Caucasians, and just like he's like they literally reenact everything that Jussie Smollett says, and they edit it to each other. And then all of a sudden there was a rope. So where there was no rope before, in a previous scene, there was a rope in front of Matt Walsh at the very end of that interview. It made everybody laugh. All 15 of us in the theater laughed at that. So yeah, someone actually came into the theater yesterday. He's like, "Is this the right theater?" I was like, "What theater? Like, what is this?" I was like, "Am I racist?" Like, "Yep, that's where we're at." So it was a very fun movie, but they made sure to show how much the people charge for their interviews and all that. Like Robin DiAngelo charged like $15,000 to talk to Matt Walsh, even though, and what's funny is they didn't know that he was Matt Walsh because he was wearing that wig, they wore at the DNC.
Shitty wig. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because I think in an earlier, like he was part of like a group, like a therapy group or something. I like how like if you like they're all Caucasian, they're being trained to be sensitive to their racism or something. Like if you're gonna cry, you gotta go in the other room. So like, and I guess that's a thing. So they send people to other rooms when they cry or something. I don't know. I don't know anything. I went into this movie blind, but apparently, yeah, this whole thing's a grift. The whole thing's a grift.
Reaper indoctrination has never sounded so sweet, has it, folks? Good God.
Like there was a point where he's talking to Robin DiAngelo and he's like, let's play some role play. So he pretends he's a black person at the office and Robin DiAngelo's, the Caucasian, and they walk past each other and he just goes up to, they walk past each other. Like, why are you smiling at me? You're making me uncomfortable. I think I'm going to go to HR because I feel oppressed and stuff. And she didn't. And she's like, okay, well, and then he's like, what would you do? And she's like, well, maybe not be so, maybe not smile, not be so oppressive and all that. And so then they redid the role play. Second day comes. She just doesn't, she walks past him, doesn't say anything. And then he goes up to her. He's like, why did you ignore me? Is it because I'm black or something? And so she couldn't come up with a solution to the words that she writes in her books. Like she spouts off all these ideas, but she doesn't really know. There's no real way to, she doesn't know how to deal with what she's written. Basically, she doesn't know how to deal with, the implications of what she's saying and all that.
Woman can't write.
I mean, I've looked into white fragility, and I'm sure that her observations of Caucasians being sensitive to that stuff, I think, is true. And I just and I think some people can be subconsciously racist, but I think we're all subconsciously racist. That's what I think.
Yes, as I said before, as long as there is race,
yes. As long as there's difference, as long as there's the idea of the other, there's different. There's always going to be differences.
Communism tried to solve this idea, this innate contradiction of human being. How can we all be the same and somehow all be different? Communism tried to solve this by ending the class system and bringing everyone together. They achieved that at the cost of 100 million lives.
Did they really get rid of the class system? It seems like they still did have a class system. There's still people that got more than others.
Well, you could make that argument. You could also make the argument that authority was divided, not class.
Yeah, that's true.
So they did get rid of the class system, but they maintained the authority system, the hierarchies of statehood, which was required to destroy said class system and to not bring it back. The destruction part led to the cost of 100 million lives, and very few, if any, communist states now exist as they started out. They failed in that objective. And I think we in the West are starting to fail because you can't square the circle of how are we all the same and how are we all different? We have to be one. We have to be either all the same or all different. We cannot exist in a society based on that hypocrisy. I mean, the idea of equality, equal opportunities, good. Equal outcomes, bad, because we all know equity is bad. But the idea of equal opportunities that will create differences.
I mean, unless we're all drones, equity could be a good thing, but we're not all drones. We're all different people. We all have different things that drive us.
Well, the biggest problem is, Brian, in a society that has equal opportunities, and we did have such a society, there were differences in economic outcomes, in social outcomes, and in cultural outcomes. And for the most part, the divides we saw, especially in the mid-20th century in the United States, were as a consequence of equal opportunities as a thing, especially after segregation came to an end officially. And that really peaked in I'd say the 70s and the 80s. 70s in regards to it being bad, and the 80s in regards to it being good. But you can't have a stable society by oscillating between good and bad. It's just not going to work. Now, we're in a very bad place right now, but we have two choices. We can either try and create a society where we're all the same and we're all treated the same, we're given the same rights and the same responsibilities, or we can live in a society that acknowledges all of our differences, our advantages and disadvantages, and have each group in society, ideally boiled down to the individual, have them play to their own strengths and have them stay away from their weaknesses. weaknesses. But we are nowhere near to achieving that kind of society because, first of all, got to shore up the ship, which means isolate our countries, fix the problems in our own countries, then try to fix the world, because that's our human nature. And we're not even starting in the process of, isolation, because that's why the US needed time to isolate, to recover, and ultimately thrive through the rest of the 20th century. That's why I think, Brian, it's very important, especially for Americans watching, to understand if you bring different groups of people from all over the world, not just from one continent, into the same, geographical area and expect them to abide by the same rules, that is just as utopian as expecting everyone to be within the same class structure and work towards the collective good, which is why you're seeing the United States especially destroy itself. You've got different peoples who cannot live to the same ideals. The Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, are the great example of that. America's effort to create America in Africa with Liberia is an example of that. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What's the legacy of that in Africa through Liberia? They eat each other. That is their life, their liberty, and their pursuit of happiness. They eat each other.
No way.
Literally, Liberia, when it was this colony, this slave colony that the United States wanted to create the U.S. in Africa through Liberia. And for a time it worked until the U.S. pulled out and let the Liberians run themselves to the ground, to the point where it was everyone fight for their own lives, their own liberties, their own pursuit of happiness. Everyone saw their differences, banded together in a tribalistic mindset, fought each other, killed each other, and in some cases, ate each other.
No way.
Yes.
That's crazy. How long ago?
Recently, the Liberian Civil War, which was a few decades ago. One of their presidents during that civil war was a cannibal, living by the American ideals, folks. Wow. Liberia even has its own White House. In a dilapidated state, but it's still a White House.
I'll have to read up on Liberia.
Liberia, I personally believe, Brian, Liberia is a great example of how ideas cannot overcome nature. Just like the utopian ideals of communism couldn't overcome the human spirit of the people living under it. So Liberia is a great example of, well, the American experiment doesn't work for everyone. Iraq, another example. Afghanistan, another example. South Vietnam, another example. Now, of course, there were opposing forces trying to stop them, so you can understand, the struggle for power. communists were very good at fighting and killing. Let's admit that, folks. They did one thing right. But the point is, ideas alone are not going to lead to a people thriving. Playing to people's strengths leads to civilizations thriving. I mean, a Spartan-like society would do very well in Africa if their motivation was to fight and to kill as a warrior group. Why? Because generally, Africans are very good fighters, and only a few of them are very good leaders. Shaka Zulu is a great example of this. One of the few African leaders that actually had a tactical brain and managed to hold off and in some cases defeat the British. But if you say that in the public discourse, they say racist. If you say there's a difference between men and women, and therefore, men do well at this and women do well at that, they call you a sexist. If you dare claim that men cannot be women, you get arrested in the UK. Talk about defying fucking reality. Jesus Christ. And that can be applied to everything, unfortunately.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to take in. The American,
you're a bold white guy. It's the easiest difficulty to convince you at.
But yeah, I'll have to read up on like the American experiment being applied to other nations. That's actually I actually find it very interesting right now. So you're right that I've been writing stuff down that you've been saying, like, I want to read up on Cecil Rhodes now. And
Haiti is another great example, Nerdporial, because the time Haiti was at its peak in prosperity was when it was under American occupation. I think from 1911 to 1936, because it was considered of strategic value. And as soon as it ceased to be useful, it was casted away and then turned into another tin pot little African, because they are, let's face it, folks, they are African, just in the Caribbean, dictatorship.
What about Cuba prior to Castro?
I think that was more political than, natural, because, pre-communism, Cuba was sort of like a mafia state backed by the United States. So the communists did have a cause to fight against, because it wasn't a democracy that abided by the will of the people. It was a mafioso-style dictatorship where all the wealthy Americans go on holiday. Imagine Las Vegas as a country. That was Cuba pre-communism.
Well, if you've seen The Godfather Part 2, you know.
And of course, communists do what they do best. They take everyone's property. They try to organize people and society when that is impossible to do without people's consent. And it all went down the drain for them when the Soviet Union collapsed. Now, a great comparison to make with Haiti is the Dominican Republic, because they share the same island.
Yes.
And the Dominican Republic, it's had its fair share of ups and downs with their own dictatorships, that sort of thing. But in recent years, the Dominican Republic has been doing very well. They've been doing so well that a lot of Haitians have been infesting their part of the island. So they're trying now to build a wall to separate the two countries. And I think a great example you could make, Nerdporial, in the Caribbean, between like the Western way of doing it, the more local way of doing it, and the African way of doing it. Compare Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. Tell me which is the best and which is the worst. Because it's not easy.
I don't know. Puerto Rico was part of the United States. U.S. territory came from Spanish-American War. So, I'm not sure how
you could add
Puerto
Cuba
Rico
to the mix as well, and it would be even more difficult to argue which is the best and which is the worst. Because Puerto Rico, folks, one of the poorest parts of the United States, isn't even close, because it's a territory, so it's treated like shit. Despite having more people living in it than I think 10 U.S. states. I think. Might be wrong there.
And how big? I mean, Puerto Rico's not that big. It's
Puerto Rico
small.
is tiny in terms of its geography, but it has I think it has millions of people living in it. Look at Wyoming, couple of 100,000. You look at the Dakotas,
Montana.
maybe.
Montana.
Montana. Yeah, and they're states. Puerto Rico is. If it did become a state, then the Republicans would never get elected again. And maybe that's why it isn't a state. But the point is, folks, it is one. I can understand why they do it for political reasons. But it has, in my view, it has every right to be a U.S. state as the states currently within the Union. But then again, it's not up to me. It's not up to me.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be, because I'm British.
No. Yeah. So, but yeah, this has been a great conversation. So, I was going to ask you before we go. I know you're a big Star Trek fan, so I'm curious, like how big of a fan are you? Like, have you seen every show and everything? Just curious.
The original series is a bit dated for me, but there are some episodes that are just so damn good. I watched those.
Do you remember which ones?
Space Seed would be the first one, and the Doomsday Machine. Those are the two. Plus the Nazi episode. I like that one as well, because it's a bit too based.
Yeah, that's the one where the Nazis are. The Nazis are the Nazis are fighting, believe it or not, the Xeon. And when every time I think Xeon, I think Mobile Suit Gundam.
I just find it very interesting, Brian, when Spock talks about or Kirk Spock, one of those, talks about how Germany went from nowhere to everywhere in like 6 years and how that was a great achievement. You wouldn't be able to say that in this day and age, despite the fact that it is true. You wouldn't be able to say that. Yeah. If the Soviet Union did it, you could say it, because that's, well, sympathetic to the current causes of the establishment. Next Generation, gone completely through it. Fantastic. Same with Deep Space Nine. Fantastic. First Star Trek show I ever watched was Voyager. Always adore it, especially for the childhood memories.
Yeah.
I really did enjoy Enterprise, but looking back, I can see why Star Trek was nearing the end of its golden age. And then when I found out Kurtzman was involved with Transformers, I thought, this man does not deserve to be anywhere near Star Trek. Love Michael Bay and his work, especially with Bam Bam Boom Boom, but that's not what Star Trek is about.
How'd you feel about
the wokeness?
How'd you feel about the Abrams films?
Man pretends to be Michael Bay when he has none of the talent.
Well, I always thought Spielberg, but yeah.
He's like a mix of the both, but those films were all style, no substance, and I fucking hate lens flare.
Yeah, it was trying to be Star Wars, but even Star Wars, there was substance to Star Wars. So, but yeah, like, and what's funny was I kind of, when I think when I saw it, I actually was so sold on it because Nimoy was in it. So Nimoy being in the movie kind of clouded my judgment. And plus, I don't know, I didn't know who Abrams was. I thought maybe it'll get even better and everything. So I saw Into Darkness, and I wanted to like it, but it was just it didn't age. It didn't age for me. It didn't age well with me all. I mean,
hey, Jar Jar, you want a mystery box? Here you go. It's a box full of live grenades.
Yeah.
How about that end the fucking story, you twat? Your greatest achievement, blowing yourself up.
Force, yeah, and then you got the Star Wars Disney Star Wars trilogy that he did 2 of the movies for, and then after that, once Rise of Skywalker came out, I got rid of everything that I owned on my shelf that had J.J. Abrams' name in it. So I got rid of Overlord, I got rid of Star Trek 09, Star Trek Into Darkness, Star Trek Beyond. I got rid of all of anything Disney Star Wars. So Star Wars Rebels, I had the couple seasons. I actually owned The Force Awakens, and believe it or not, I actually owned The Last Jedi, because I thought they were going to get better. Yeah, I was a sweet summer nerdporial then. So what can I say? Once I saw Discovery, that was another case where I tried to like it. I tried to get on board with what they were doing. And I once again, I projected what I knew about Star Trek onto that show. And the thing is, you can't project old Star Trek onto new Trek. They're two totally different beasts. One's really Star Trek and one's not. One just pretends to be.
It's in the name, STD.
Literally, yeah. And then you have the whole thing with Michael Burnham just starting a war, and then you start the whole show with this really cringe battle that doesn't even look good, and then all of a sudden she's in prison, and then all of a sudden she's in there's a Klingon war that they stole from the thing from the Axanar from the Axanar fan film, which is way better, even though that was run by a real jerk, according to Robert Meyer Burnett.
You're telling me a brown woman started a war and ended up in prison? No. Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
And her name just happened to be the name of a man's name, you know? Yeah. It just, it's crazy. Like,
since when did Dick Cheney get race and gender swapped?
I don't know, but you do know who made an appearance in Star Trek Discovery.
Oh,
you find out who the president of Earth is in the 32nd century.
Stacy the Abrams tank, because that's how big she is. Good God.
the Abrams tank. Wow.
Yeah.
So it took, and one of my favorite comments that somebody said was, it took her 1,200 years to finally get elected. So that's the one thing.
Does the Federation even have a democratic model? Has that really been penetrated as a topic? Do they have an electoral college? I don't know.
No, I don't know. They have there's a Federation Council and there's a Federation President, and that's all I know.
There's 1,500 planets across 800 light years. How the fuck can you run a democracy on that basis? How? And
then how is it possible that it's always on Earth, even though Earth, established it? How can Earth always be the center of that?
Yeah, that's like saying Philadelphia is the capital of the United States. It's not. It's where everything started, but it's not the capital.
Exactly. So I honestly, that's one of the things that I've been happy that early Trek has kind of avoided talking about, because it would just, the whole post-scarcity thing, just because they tried to explain it in the Orville. They tried to explain in the third season of the Orville, and it's just like, this is dumb. Like,
you can't explain an ideal. Then you can't really. An ideal is something that you always reach for. You can't really get it, but if you reach for it, who knows what great things you can get along the way. That is the purpose of an ideal worth striving for, worth fighting for, worth dying for. The United States once had a great ideal. The British Empire once had a great ideal. And if you want to go far back, so did the Mongols, so did the Romans, and so did the Macedonians. They always strove for a greater ideal.
The Romans played to their strengths. That's why the Romans were successful.
And that's why religion as a thing has always existed, because it's a great example of that great ideal to strive for. That's why you'll never get rid of it as a concept.
That's why religion's been the backbone behind almost every successful civilization.
Because it drives people. It drives people towards that greater ideal. And without that great
something
ideal,
greater than themselves, basically, whether it be God or, like you said, an ideal or something.
That's why lands and places and people who don't have that great ideal to strive for, they're finished. They are, in my view, worse than dead, because at least the dead rest in peace.
They just exist, basically. So, oh man, it's been a very interesting talk. I am tired, and I know it's like what time is it by you? Was it 2:30?
It's nearly
3 a.m. by you.
It's nearly 3 o'clock in the morning, but I'm not tired. It's been a
Are you gonna eventually pull an Az and retire from the hypnotic?
No. fuck no, man. There's a reason he's lost all that weight. Must have some kind of wasting disease or something. My goodness. Hey, folks, Az doesn't lose weight. He just grew a beard, put on a shitty wig and some glasses. And here he is. JK lol.
JK lol. That's awesome. Ryan, we definitely have to do part 2. There's a lot more to discuss, and there's a lot more for me to learn and everything. So,
got to make you reality based somehow, because that's my way of fulfilling the ideal. But
how many? I'm curious. How many times have I been on? I've been on reality based.
You've been on a few times. I think you've been on the longest show we've ever had with Pips and Stig Kenobi. It's impossible to get a hold of Stig Kenobi.
That was the longest show.
I think it was, as far as I remember. It's rare that we ever get close to 3 hours, because usually I go a bit crazy and say some crazy things. That's why I don't like the idea of doing a 6 to 8 hour show, because I literally will be climbing the walls.
Yeah. I don't think I've done. I think the longest chill stream I've done was with Leon. Leon, our mutual friend Leon. 5 hours. 5 hours just talking nerd stuff. That's it. No culture war, just stuff that we both like, and it just lasted for 5 hours. So
I call him Words. I call him Words as an insult, and I also call him a libertarian contrarian, despite him being an anarchist. There's another fucking utopian dream for you. Anarchism. But that's a topic for another show.
Yeah. So you got anything you want to promote? I know you posted videos today.
Yes, I did release 5 videos for today. Hopefully I'll release a few for tomorrow. We'll be having a panel show this Sunday, reality-based extreme. That'll be at 9 p.m. UK time. It'll be me and a panel of 5 criminally underrated content creators. Hopefully we can push to 2.5 hours, have a great catch up and talk topics of the day, and fingers crossed I can keep on going and keep on growing. That's another one of my sayings. We smashed our target for 2024 of 2,500 subscribers. Our target for 2025 was 3,000. I don't think we're going to hit it by the end of this year, but nice conservative targets allows me to relax, allows me to take stock of where we are.
No liberal targets.
No. Fuck that. Fuck liberalism. But in all seriousness, folks, it'll give me time to do some introspection and to potentially innovate, which is always it's always nice. But I think 2025 will be a nice, relaxing year for reality based, so we can stay under the radar, keep an eye on plenty of people, might make a few of them rising stars, and then just continue, because I'm 25. I can do this easily for the next 25 years. I ain't no Az in my early 50s wrapping things up. No, I'm in my mid-20s, despite visual evidence to the contrary. This is what happens when you live in one of the poorest countries in Europe, Wales. Without English funding, we'd be fucking Albania. Literally. A shithole.
I thought Wales, they don't even speak English, they speak Welsh, basically.
Well,
it sounds totally...
I know we're supposed to be wrapping up the show, Nerdporial, but to talk about, the nature of Wales, do you know why I believe in population replacement?
Why?
Because it happened in Wales.
No way.
Yeah. I mean, Welsh speakers were the majority.
Yeah.
Then after centuries, it didn't happen in years, but after centuries of English occupation, the majority is English by a factor of 2 to 1. So only a third of Wales speaks Welsh. And most of that is in the countryside, and most of that is on the coasts, the north and the west.
Yeah.
So if that could happen once, it can happen again and again and again and again. I believe population replacement is happening across the West. Why? Because it happened in the land I live in. And I am a consequence of that, because I'm an English speaker in Wales who didn't want to learn Welsh growing up because why? It's not a transferable skill beyond Wales, beyond 1 million people. Give me an extra hour of physical training, because God, I needed it, and most of us did. But or another subject. It's just not useful. In my view, it's had its time. Let it fade away. But it is a great example, Brian, of population replacement. Yes, it took centuries, but it can be done, and it's happening to our own lands. But if you point it out, you're racist. You're a bigot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to point it out, and if you don't like it, go fuck yourself. That's the base nature of reality-based. You stand by reality, and you be based in doing so. I know I put them together, but they're really just separate words put together. I hate putting commas in things, so that's what you got.
You know, I was looking up reality-based today. I just Googled it, and I found another podcast.
Yes, Rattlesnake. Good old Rattlesnake. Yeah. Well, he may be far more prominent than I am, but I started it before him. So, LMFAO, motherfucker. I've got right of legitimacy.
Wow.
Don't worry, though. I hate podcasts.
Hey, this was a fun podcast right here. So, even though
please don't call it that. Call it a show.
That's the boomer. That's the boomer in me. That's the boomer in me really wanting to speak. But yeah, this was great stream, Ryan. Thanks for doing this. Definitely got to do part 2. The takeaway from this stream is: am I a racist?
Yes.
And that's all there is. That's all there is to it. All right. So, so for me, tomorrow, after the Hypnocast, me and Leon are going to be doing a serial horror chat. So it's going to be like, it's typically like CHILLPOREAL, except it's going to be just the two of us talking about a movie. In this case, we're going to be talking about Reanimated, which is based on a, I can't think of his name. What's his name? Author, H.P. Lovecraft. So, and it stars one of my favorite Star Trek actors of all time, Wei-Yun, the Vorta, and Shran, the blue-skinned Andorian.
Jeffrey Combs.
Jeffrey Combs. Oh yeah, who also played Liquidator Brunt. I forget. Well, he also played the Vince McMahon. He played the Vince McMahon of Star Trek Voyager. The episode with The Rock. Remember the episode with The Rock? He was the Vince McMahon of that WWE ship in the Delta Quadrant. Yeah, so he was.
That was funny.
Yeah, so you had him. What's funny? He was in it, and I think J.G. Hertzler was 7 of 9's
Hirogen
trainer. Yeah. Hirogen trainer and all that. So,
just to let CLS know, I am thankfully monetized. I was demonetized, but that wasn't because of anything I said. It was because I couldn't prove who I was. Thankfully, I have. Now that I have been monetized, I've officially been monetized for it'll be a year in the beginning of October. So I've got quite the streak, and it just goes to show, if you stay under the radar, you can get away with fucking anything in this day and age, folks.
Yeah.
Just don't be a glory seeker. Don't lead the charge. Not everyone has to be a nerdrotic and be this great guy, this pinnacle of virtue who has gone from being Satan to Archangel Michael. And in all seriousness, folks, check out his journey, because that's literally what he's turned into, folks.
Mm-hmm.
That's why. But not everyone needs to be like that. It takes all sorts to be a content creator. Be yourself, have a great time, have great talks, and be you.
Be real.
You.
I don't know how to follow up on that.
Well, I just thought of something heinously controversial. It is the following: be you, don't be Jew. See, look.
All right.
I know exactly what to say to cause problems. That's the danger with me.
So yeah, Ryan. So Ryan being here, thank you for doing this. And yeah, if anybody's still listening, if you are interested in supporting the Nerdporial channel, consider being a member. It's you become part of the continuum, and who knows what rewards may be wrought from that. Maybe you'll be a guest on the channel or something like that. So, but yeah, but expect more content. Definitely expect certain other channels. Next week I'm not doing that. I might schedule as CHILLPOREAL, but I'm doing a book stream with my friend who I'm currently reading a book. Reading a book that's I don't think anybody's heard of, but I'm reading it now, and it's actually pretty good. Imagine the France, 13th, 14th century. The Black Death is going on. There's angels and there's fallen angels on Earth, and there's horror elements. There's monsters going around because of these fallen angels trying to play God. And well, there's a little girl who is the key to everything, and it's actually pretty interesting because she's not a girl boss. But
who will end the Black Death? A tiny white girl.
Probably, yeah. So we'll see. I only have 6 chapters left to read, so that's hopefully tonight I'll find out what ultimately happens. But it's pretty good. I'm really enjoying it. It's called Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. So yeah, and so Sunday I'll be doing a stream about The Great Hunt, the Second Wheel of Time book with Ms. Martin Muses. She just read the book, and we'll be joined by Dane of the White Cloaks. So it'll be the 3 of us talking. So there'll be some fantasy. I'm trying to get the book club stuff going again because I'm going to be reading book 6, The Lord of Chaos, which is considered the pinnacle of the Wheel of Time series. And yeah, I want to eventually finish that series. Finish what I started. So. So I do want to get some. I've been promising this. I do want to get some videos out. My 2001 Space Odyssey retrospective is still being in the process of written. I just stopped writing months ago, and I need to get back into it. So maybe I'll scrap that. I'll pull George R. R. Martin, scrap that, and write something else, and then wait and sit on my ass for like the next 14 years. So who knows? But other than that, yeah, everybody, just don't let people shame you. Don't let people shame you, and especially try your best to have political discourse as best you can. Try not to take away someone's sense of reality. Don't get people on the defensive. Just once again, do what Daryl Davis did, and try to just listen to what they say. Listen, even if it's stuff you disagree with, and just try to cleverly, bring in other ideas to get that person you're talking to think a different way. Might work, it might not, but it's always important to try. Always try to have a conversation with people. I know it's so easy to dismiss people. I know I do that too, but it's good to have conversations. And that's why I think is missing from today's discourse.
And it's a great job we didn't bring up the tranny demons because, well, you talk about discussions with people. Well, I don't see them as people. But that's a topic for another show. And yes, never rush art, Nerdporial. We don't want you. We don't want you going to Russia. It's like, oh yeah, I got to write my project. Don't send me to Russia. It's like, I got to write my project. Don't send me to Vietnam. Fucking
yeah,
bastard.
All right, guys. Definitely, if you haven't, Ryan Roger Athay's channel is in the description. I'm sure everybody here is already subscribed to him, but if you're not subscribed to him, just give him a sub. Just give him a chance.
Well, we've seen an uptick. We've seen an uptick in viewership, which is fine. We're experiencing some yo-yoing, folks, which is always a
yo-yo as in like the diet, like people are getting fat and then losing weight and then getting fat again. Or yo-yo as
in gaining support and losing support, like a yo-yo, going up and going down. Channel suppression really is a bitch. But I'm just gonna keep on going, and I'll go far as a rising star. I'm not gonna put out my thumb because that will mean something different. But it's 4. It's 4. I was very lucky I didn't do that because My goodness. But please end the show before I completely destroy your channel.
The conversations are important in and of themselves. So that's one thing. Just if you are upset about viewership, I mean, I've been there. Think about just think about doing the work and doing what you want to do, and just getting it done, and just seeing it through. That in and of itself will lead to happiness. Not focus on things that are within your control, not beyond your control. All right. But not to you. I'm talking to the chat. Ryan, I'm sure you know all that already. So
Oh, absolutely.
that's all stoic stuff.
Before we wrap up, bit of breaking news. Demon rats have launched a chemical attack against Trump supporters. Yeah. Yeah. If they can get away with it, folks, they will do all of us in. All of us. Thank you all for watching. Bye for now.
All right, guys. Definitely take care. Stay safe. And stay inaugural. Later.
Bye.